Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the most must-hear podcast on the internet. This is Caps Locks and Chair Shots. For those of you that don't know, my name is Ed Burkeen, and I am the host here for this glorious hour of wrestling talk. With me is my newest tag team compatriot, the Broken Comedian. His name is Alex. Say hi to the people, Alex.
The cream rises to the top. Ooh, yeah.
And he is the muscle of the podcast, future MMA fighter and recent graduate. He is the one, the only, the Jaime. Say hi to the people, Jaime.
What's up, wrestling fans? The original greatest man that ever lived is back in the podcast.
Alrighty, let's do this thing. Let's start the week off, as we always do, with the action on Monday night. Jaime, let's go to you. Give me one thing that stood out to you from the go-home show as we head to Payback.
I was surprised Kalisto won that match. I was expecting Braun's gonna dump Kalisto once again and it's over, but in a sudden twist, Kalisto won the match to set up something more destructive for Braun Strowman.
Yeah, I think the way they built up that destruction, and I don't think you can call it anything other than destruction, of what they did to Kalisto was pretty epic. It was very reminiscent of Chainsaw Charlie and Cactus Jack going at it some almost 20 years ago. Alex, what did you think of the little man getting trash beaten out of him?
Braun looked really strong in defeat with how they booked it, which I think is great. Keep Braun looking strong so he can get fed to Roman again, you know? I hate that Kalisto is just a jobber, basically. Like, he's one step above Adam Rose at this point.
Why isn't he in 205 Live? He's obviously under the weight requirement.
Yeah, why wasn't Sin Cara on 205 Live?
Well, that was probably to keep him healthy. Jack Gallagher would look at him the wrong way coming off that umbrella move off the top rope, and Sin Cara would break his pelvis. That's probably easily explainable, but why Kalisto isn't on there? He would be so over with that 205 crowd. One thing I don't understand, because this obviously isn't doing anything for his career. Speaking of not doing anything for careers, we had perhaps the worst segment in the history of wrestling. For those of you that may not have tuned in on Monday, or may not care, Dana Brooke had a match with Alicia Fox. Raw was in Kansas City, and I haven't heard a crowd that quiet at a wrestling show without an injury ever. Emma came out, and not only was there no reaction, it was so bad that the announcers were bored with it. Where does that leave this? Can we just pull a plug on this? Does anybody really care about Emma? Does anybody really want to watch Alicia Fox in a match? Is Dana Brooke a talent that should be anywhere but NXT to be redone?
Dana Brooke shouldn't be redone. She just needs more time to develop.
Isn't that what NXT is for, though? To develop talent?
She was called up way too soon. She should have spent another year or two down in developmental.
For me, Dana Brooke is kind of a powerhouse type. So you see that athletic powerhouse type of superstar. So back in NXT, it was already wrong to pair her up with Emma, since she's not the one to be mentored. It's like she's the one who should impose her dominance for her athletic superiority over the rest of the women's division. So it's kind of the build-up back in NXT that led to her stagnation on Monday Night Raw, in my opinion.
Oh, I completely agree. And another thing, why would you have Dana Brooke being mentored by Emma when Emma can't figure out what she is on a week-to-week basis? What is she? Is she the bubble-blowing, let's do a dance with Santino person? Is she Emelina, which, what the hell was Emelina? Is she the aviator-wearing Emma, which, what the hell is that? What is she? She needs to develop more. You can't expect her to mentor somebody when she needs mentored as well. That was the worst segment of Monday Night Raw that was intended to be good. Let's put it that way. Moving on to something that was good. In the same ring, we had Finn Balor, Samoa Joe, Carl Anderson, Luke Gallows, Seth Rollins, and Big Cass. It was a 6-man tag team match, and every indie, mark, snark, whatever, creamed themselves when that collection of talent was in the ring at the same time. We may be seeing, there are rumors that there may be some seeds of discontent between Balor and Rollins over Balor's injury that cost him the Universal title just 24 hours after he won it. What did you think of having those 6 pieces of talent in the same place at the same time?
Well, the first question that popped in my mind is, where are the Bullet Club chants? Like, are we supposed to cheer that? You see, you have Carl Anderson, you have Luke Gallows, you have Finn Balor sharing the same ring, but just to prove how dull the crowd was back Monday night. Nobody even cheered. Back then, when it was AJ Styles, Luke Gallows, and Carl Anderson, when they were the club, when they were feuding with John Cena, the crowd would always cheer, Bullet Club, Bullet Club. But now with the original leader of the Bullet Club sharing the same ring with two of the other guys he used to roll with back in Japan, there weren't any cheers, like not even elation from the crowd. That's what bothered me more that's what struck me more rather than the match itself.
Well, Kansas City, it's Kansas City. You know, it's a very marquee city. It's not going to react to Bullet Club very much, you know? And also, Bullet Club has lost a lot of steam. I'm not sure many people really care about it anymore.
Well, I think that in large part is because of what the WWE has done to them. We had Gallows and Anderson and AJ all at the same time, and they were together for, 3 weeks before they went their separate ways. And now we got Finn Balor on the same show, and yeah, he's wearing the Balor Club jacket and the armband, but we have seen zero interaction between Anderson and Gallows and Balor. They haven't done a promo together. They haven't had an awkward glance in a hallway. You can't expect the fans to mark out for something when it's completely being buried. It doesn't make any sense. And
well, I wouldn't say it's being buried. It's not being. WWE lacks subtlety, and if it's not on screen and pushed into your face at all times, I guess that's what people think is being buried now. But it's really not. It's just they're not presenting it to you.
If the WWE treated a wrestler the way they're treating the Bullet Club, or the conglomeration that could be the Bullet Club, you would have people screaming for Triple H's head because he's burying them. He would be getting shovels in the mail because he's burying somebody. This is no different. But let's move on to something a little bit better. The match of the night, for the first time in a long time, came from the Cruiserweight division. Austin Aries and Jack Gallagher versus Neville and TJ Perkins. This could be one of the things where it's like being the skinniest kid at fat camp. You were good, but it was a go-home show on Raw. The phenomenal 5-arm from Double A to Perkins, I loved the look of that move. Honestly, even though 205 Live that nobody's watching, I think it's one of the best storylines on Raw. I don't know where we go from here with this. At Payback, we're going to see Austin Aries and Neville, TJ Perkins, Jack Gallagher, they're in the mix. Where do we go from here?
Storyline-wise, I have to imagine they're going to wrap this whole mess up here real soon, because what can you really do with it? You just turn TJ Perkins heel. I guess they could put the title on someone other than Neville and have them fight Perkins for it.
Austin Aries has to be the new champion?
Yeah, I would imagine. Here's the thing with the Cruiserweights. There's two problems with the Cruiserweights right now. Number one, they have no character. Who is Mustafa Ali? Who is TJ Perkins? Who are any of these guys, and why should I care about them? They have no character, so no one's going to care about them. And number two, these are the best athletes in the world, and you're just having them wrestle the same match week in, and that's boring. They should treat the Cruiserweights the same way TNA used to treat the X Division back in the day.
Well, I think in large part that's exactly what they're trying to do. You have all these indie marks that are sitting there and saying how much the WWE sucks and how they need to bring back real athletes in real wrestling. And you look at it, and that's exactly what they've done. 205 Live has given them the opportunity to develop the characters, but nobody watches 205 Live, so nobody knows why Jack Gallagher carries an umbrella other than the fact it's a British thing. Nobody knows why TJ Perkins comes out to video game music, probably a top 5 entrance going right now. Nobody knows why. Nobody knows Austin Aries other than the stuff he used to do in TNA or Impact or whatever you want to call it, because nobody watches 205 Live. 205 Live is where they develop that character, but because nobody's watching it, it's the equivalent of debuting a new diva on Total Divas and not having her come out and just watch women's wrestling. Nobody knows why that person's standing at the entrance ramp. Nobody knows why that is, because the following for the show that they're on is so much smaller than the actual big show, and nobody really cares.
Since I'm the one who regularly watches 205 Live, I do the previews and the recaps, I say they're kind of showing potential, showing promise. See, they're just given an hour, and it comes after, I think, main event and SmackDown Live, so it's like the last event of the night, so fans would tend to go home because they're already saturated with wrestling it's like they've watched enough wrestling for the night, not knowing what 205 Live has to offer. So I beg to disagree with the fact that they do not have characters because that's what they're trying to work on right now. As you can see, Mustafa Ali's like the rising star. That's kind of his character right now, the rising star. And you have this envious veteran like Drew Gulak who's trying to impose his knowledge on Mustafa Ali and saying, "Oh, this stuff doesn't work. This stuff doesn't work." So what happens if Mustafa Ali listens to him? Then you have Drew Gulak going over Mustafa Ali and getting his opportunity. You see, there are various stories like the love triangle. So there's a various twist in it from when we thought Rich Swann was going to pursue Alicia Fox, then it turned out that he was just defending Cedric Alexander's honor. So it's kind of a work in progress since the show's just started a few months back. So they're still trying to work on how they're going to fit in these cruiserweights into particular storylines.
Now, there's a few things I want to talk about what you just said, but we're going to have to save it for the later time because you gave me the perfect segue. Mustafa Ali, he is of Middle Eastern Indian descent, correct?
Correct.
So is our number one contender for the WWE Championship. And that happened on SmackDown Live last week where Jinder Mahal, the former bass player for 3MB, he wound up walking out of SmackDown Live with the WWE Championship. He didn't win it, but he left with it.
Dave Meltzer has been reporting that this is because WWE wants to push into the Indian market. Okay, I guess. Is India that big of a market, really?
1.1 billion people on the subcontinent of India with TV.
Sure, it has a large population, but isn't most of that population poor? Do that many people have cable television?
It's a common misconception about that. There's a lot of India. They're very densely populated, but they're not nearly as fourth world country as we think they are. Yeah, there's a lot of bad, but there's also a lot of lower middle class and up people that do watch the WWE, and even poor people here, they still know what's going on because wrestling is one of the things that transcends social classes. So India does have a huge following for the WWE.
It just, it seems weird that now is when they try and push into India. I guess they've tried before with the Great Khali, but it was the Great Khali. And Impact had tried with the whole ring-to-ring thing. But I don't know. It's just a weird thing trying to push into India to me. Because it's India. And no one thinks about India.
Racist?
It's not, I'm not saying...
you are racist, sir. You are racist.
Okay, I'm racist.
Wait, you see, more of giving the fans a fresher face rather than pushing the Indian market, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Like, it's a fresher face for the title picture.
And that's something we haven't had in a long time, where it's been somebody literally out of nowhere that's been able to come and give us that, did that just happen moment. And now this, the last person to really do that was probably Edge. To come literally out of nowhere when a number one contender shot and everybody, because if you remember, Edge had that Money in the Bank championship for almost a year. And he didn't cash that in until he got John Cena in the Elimination Chamber, the pay-per-view before WrestleMania when it was set to expire. And everybody's like, oh, wow, that really just happened. And if you want to draw parallels between Jinder and Edge, it can easily be done where Jinder spent a large part of his career not necessarily winning big matches, but kind of being a guy that, hey, he's got a lot of potential, but he's not quite there yet. A lot of the concerns that we have about Jinder Mahal are the same concerns in 2006 that we had about Edge. It's just Edge had ridiculously more amounts of talent and experience, but it's the exact same questions if you go back 11 years that people had about the rated R superstar that we have about Jinder Mahal right now. It's just, I really don't think we're going to see Jinder Mahal and a former women's champion have a live sex celebration in the ring. Let's move on.
I'd pay good money to see that, quite frankly. I don't know who he could do it with.
Well, let's see. Lita was big and then took 5 years off. So who was big 5 years ago?
AJ Lee? No, Paige.
Paige.
The internet would break.
So would Del Rio.
Hey, it's El Patron now. It's Alberto El Patron, and he is the #1 contender for the globe. We got time for that? We got time for that. We'll get to Alberto El Patron here in a minute. But let's move on to another set of #1 contenders that were crowned on SmackDown Live. We had a first ever, at least the first that I can remember, Beat the Clock challenge for a tag team #1 contendership. American Alpha was taking on the Clones, and they were the ones that would set the time. Does anybody else see that they're missing somebody, maybe a cousin? Anybody see that? Because right now, they're not cool.
Doesn't Carlito still have heat because you kept leaving early or something like that?
Yeah, I've heard that, but time heals all wounds. I mean, if Lesnar can come back after what he's done, I'm pretty sure Carlito, the second you hear, I spit in the face of people who don't want to be cool, on the PA system, the crowd would go insane. And the Clones need that.
I feel like it'd be another Grandmaster Stex Day, quite frankly. The crowd goes mild.
I love that. I completely agree with you on that because, Too Cool, everybody marked out for 3 things. Rikishi's ass, Scotty 2 Hottie's worm, and when the lights dropped and they did that dance at the end. Carlito, is he needed with the Clones or no?
Well, the thing about Carlito is he stands better alone rather than in a tag team. Remember, they put him in a tag team with Primo, so back when he was still with the WWE. I think that was his last run when they put him with Primo, and he became more of a comedic act rather than a serious player back when he started, when he debuted, when he feuded with John Cena. He's better as a singles guy rather than in a tag team. The two being his henchmen could be, but I see Carlito better as a singles competitor.
Well, was he ever really serious to begin with, though? I mean, you look at it, and his whole gimmick was biting an apple and spitting it in somebody's face. I mean,
couldn't you say the same about Broken Matt? It's a goofy character. It's all about how you present the goofy character. You can make anything that's goofy into something serious. It's all about how other people react to it.
The Undertaker is a perfect example of that. And you know what? I'll even go as far as saying, if they brought back Doink the Clown and made him a dark, creepy-looking thing, take away the carnival music and make him a dark and evil clown, it could be one of the most terrifying characters there ever was. But they went the completely opposite way with that, and he's been the punchline of every joke about wrestling in the early 1990s. The other Beat the Clock match was between Breezango and the Ascension. I, sitting at home, thought I knew who was going to win this match as soon as it was announced. You had the Ascension not really getting the push that everybody anticipated they would get when they left NXT, and Breezango has pretty much been a laughingstock. Fandango has never really been taken seriously. He was a comedic act when he was, doing his ballroom dancing with Summer Rae and then with Rose, and now he's with Tyler Breeze, who once again is more of cannon fodder than anything else. And now they are the #1 contenders. Beautiful supermodel kick from Tyler Breeze. I think the Falcon Arrow is one of the most underrated finishers in wrestling. For the 3rd wrestling show in a row, this was our, holy crap, did that just happen moment of the night. Where does this leave Breezango as far as, do they have a shot at the tag team titles?
I love Breezango, but I hate their name. They desperately need a different name. Febreze, how about that? I guarantee I'm not the first person to think of that. But I love Febreze, but they're jobbers. They aren't gonna be challenging for the titles anytime soon.
Where does this leave American Alpha? They were billed to be the next up-and-coming tag team. Where does this leave them as far as they're not in the title picture anymore? SmackDown really doesn't have a strong tag team division.
Well, maybe put them in a storyline of a journey back to the title. So it creates, once again, another underdog story for the team. Like a long, hard-fought journey back to the title for them. Since it's the jobbers, like Alex described them, it's the jobbers who are getting the shot. So, like, American Alpha is going to look like American Alpha is going to be overlooked. Then they're going to start voicing out. Then they're going to start fighting it out until they reach a title, regardless of who holds it.
All right, just 5 nights away from Payback, no one was expecting Randy Orton to be in a match, especially a no disqualification match. And even if he was in a no DQ match, Rowan took it to Orton, and then Orton comes out he winds up winning the match, which I honestly didn't care about. I mean, we all kind of knew they weren't going to take out Orton 5 days before a pay-per-view match that they've been building the pay-per-view around. We see Jinder come out, and the Bollywood boys. They lay Orton out in the ring. Mahal steals his title. This gives us a few questions. Where do you see Jinder Mahal and the Bollywood boys going forward?
Upon their first match, maybe not yet, but maybe Jinder is going to use dirty means to win the match. I'm not really sure where it goes right now because Orton's still occupied with his feud with Bray Wyatt. So it's hard to make a prediction from now, but the feud shows promise. It's only hard for me to think about Jinder being a huge player because of his past, but how he performed as of late there. It shows promise, If they make a lengthy feud out of it, shows promise.
We have the match with Randy Orton and Bray Wyatt. House of Horrors match. What is it? Do you know anything? Nobody seems to know anything about it.
I have heard. I'm not even sure if it's for the title at this point.
It is not. They took that stipulation out when they crowned Jinder as the number one contender.
Okay, so it's not even for the title. So this is a pointless match we don't know the rules for. Is almost certainly just going to end up with Bray losing another damn match.
That's entirely possible. Now, we did have a title match go Tuesday night, and that was Charlotte getting her shot at Naomi. The match itself was decent, but the ending saw 3 women and a half woman in James Ellsworth take out Charlotte because she got the opportunity. Now, I wrote an article on RealSport101.com, which is about to debut here in the next coming days, about how Total Divas has destroyed Natalya and destroyed pretty much the entire women's division. We see Natty go from being one of the best female workers, if not one of the best workers in the entire WWE, and now she's acting like a schoolgirl, high school
crybaby.
Thank you. For lack of, I was going to say, an unmarried female dog, but yes, crybaby. And, what happened to the days where when we heard that high-pitched guitar squeal that we'd all be excited about, here comes a heart, here comes a 20-minute match where we're all going to be on our feet and watching it, to now it's just, hey, Natty's going to come out and say something kind of mean and give a weird, mean look, and yay. It's destroyed things, and they showed that perfectly on SmackDown on Tuesday. If that match doesn't get interrupted, who is the rightful SmackDown Women's Champion?
I don't know who the rightful champion would be, but I'd guess they probably put it on Charlotte, honestly.
Well, the match itself, I don't think it's main event worthy. I think it was forced upon since they always did it back in Raw, and it's Charlotte, so I think they forced it upon being a main event despite it being a title match. Because in my opinion, given the angle where Jinder stole the title, Randy Orton and Eric Rowan should have main evented that card.
I completely agree with you. And it's worth noting that Charlotte is the first woman in the history of the WWE to be in a main event spot on a Raw, a SmackDown, and a pay-per-view and be an active competitor in the ring for all 3 of those. So, congratulations to Charlotte. That being said, we are at our halfway point of the show. So let's give our introductions and shout-outs as we put a pause on wrestling and say hello to everybody. Let's start with Alex. Alex, where can they find you on Twitter?
They can find me on the Unfunny Official. It's at Unfunny Official. I had to think about that because I don't know my own Twitter. You can find me on YouTube as the Unfunny Comedian. I am currently working on I'm currently working on a video, I guess is probably the first thing that will come out, with a fellow YouTuber who has never heard Kendrick Lamar before. And I'm trying to introduce him to the world of Kendrick Lamar.
You, sir, should go to jail for that. Kendrick
Lamar is the best rapper in the world.
I want to reach through the computer and punch you 3,500 miles away. Moving on. Jaime, you are the muscle of this podcast. Where can we find you on Twitter? What do you got working on for Real Sport 101?
Well, effective May 1st, people could find me at the Jaime Luis. That's my first name. That's my given name. I'm not working on anything new yet for Real Sports except for the recaps. But I'm trying to think of making a write-up on maybe Muhammad Hassan again. Some specifics, if I can find what he did after wrestling, his life after wrestling. Well, right now I'm trying to get in the radio industry as you, Ed, have mentioned, I've just graduated, so I've been auditioning for various radio stations.
Hopefully we'll be able to tune in on the internet and listen to the Jaime Luis. That's where you can find him on Twitter. As for me, you can find me on realsport101.com. I am a writer. I do all the recaps for the three main shows. That's Impact, Raw, and SmackDown. I also do all those less heard and little known stories you may not know about the wrestling industry. You can find me, just search my name, Ed Burkeen. You can also find me on Twitter at the official Twitter page for the podcast, CLANDCS. And you can find us on YouTube, just search Caps Lux and Chair Shots. That is the official YouTube account of the podcast. Now, let's go and let's play a fun little game. I asked both of you earlier in the week to come up with a scenario that would have changed the way wrestling is today if it either went ahead and happened or didn't happen. Jaime, we're going to start with you. Give me one scenario that would have changed the face of wrestling today.
Last week we talked about Awesome Kong and if she could have done well in the WWE. So given that we already have guys like Charlotte, Sasha Banks, and Naomi's getting a career renaissance of her own, what if the WWE stuck with models as the face of the women's division? What could have happened?
So
will they poke fun at Charlotte like they did with Mickie James and Natalya and Beth Phoenix? Would the sassy ones poke fun at the better wrestlers?
So pretty much what you're saying is, say Ivory was still the only good female wrestler there was, and we got more Tori Wilson and Stacy Keibler and Layla and Michelle McCool competing for the championship. What would have happened there? That's an interesting what if there. Women's wrestling is actually something people want to watch now. People tune in to see Charlotte and tune in to see Naomi and Becky Lynch and Sasha Banks. People tune in to see those, and if we don't have that, it'd be pretty interesting. Plus, that was a huge part of the Attitude Era. And half, three-quarters, handprints on the booby, women naked. So, Alex, what do you think would have happened if we don't see athletes as females, but just curves?
I don't think that they really chose to change how women's wrestling was presented. I think they were forced into it by a changing culture. And it would have happened eventually either way. Because of Tumblr and these ultra PC people, let's say.
I've never heard of Tumblr being referred to as Ultra PC, but we'll run with it. Alrighty, Alex, what is your scenario that we can either do or undo to change wrestling?
I was thinking long and hard about this because I really want to try and think of how it would have affected wrestling, but then I realized because this is so recent, there's no way to know because the effects are still happening, and it's that I would have loved to have seen Billy Corgan actually, gain ownership of TNA. Because he could have. 2016 was the best creative year for Impact, bar none.
Holy crap, do I disagree.
Okay, we're going to have to agree to disagree then.
Oh, I hate that phrase. But this is the biggest. This right here will be known as the best. And if you want to talk about the best creative year for Impact, that's got to go to about 2004, 2005, when they built AJ, when they built James Storm, when they built Christian back up, when they had all the big stars. That was the best year. But continue with your
that
scenario.
might have been the best year for in-ring presentation. That might have been the best year for wrestling. But I don't think it was the best year for storylines and for creative. But either way, Billy Corgan would have at least given it this new set of eyes on wrestling. It would have been a new presentation. And he could have brought in big music and movie industry people to help. Like, there were a couple, what's his name, the rapper, Wale. There was talks of Wale coming into TNA at one point. And, he could have maybe brought in Max Landis, because Max Landis was in that Final Deletion hype package.
Yeah, but just remember, a big-name wrestling company tried to save themselves by bringing in musical talents and movie stars, and that's why we had David Arquette as a world champion and Kiss getting paid $5 million to do a concert that everybody turned off their TVs for. Just saying, it didn't work in the past.
I'm not saying they should have been on-screen talent. I'm saying writing talent.
What does a musician know about wrestling? Dave Grohl can teach me how to play a guitar, the drums, and everything else. I am perfectly okay with it. But he has no business telling me that James Storm should be the Impact Wrestling champion. That's like Freddie Prinze Jr. being a writer for the WWE. I can't say what ideas he came up with or what he didn't. All I can say is while he was a writer for the WWE saw a decline. I'm not saying it's his fault. I'm just saying there was a movie star that wrote for the WWE during its biggest point of fall. That's all I'm going to say about that.
I think Billy Corgan is all money. Like, he has a lot of money from being a rock star, but I don't think Billy Corgan is, knowledgeable about running a wrestling business. It's just like, you have a lot of money, think of ways to invest it and see if it returns, but wrestling-wise, business-wise, creative-wise, I don't think Billy Corgan would fare as good as Anthem is faring recently.
Now, as I came up with one myself, I actually came up with two, and I'm going to get to the first one we're going to talk about, and the second one will be the bonus, because I'm not sure how much either of you two know about this guy. But mine would be, back when the WWE jumped USA for Spike TV. Originally, USA was looking to keep wrestling on their network, and they were in talks with ECW to bring ECW onto the USA network. Ultimately, it fell through, but if ECW gets onto USA and Raw is on Spike, ECW doesn't die. WCW was already on life support. It was going to die. ECW wouldn't have. ECW had a working relationship with the WWE. They were cross-promoting in certain things. They had been doing that for years. Paul Heyman was seen on both brands of television. If ECW gets onto the USA Network, would we still be talking about ECW tuning in every, let's say, Wednesday night to watch hardcore TV?
ECW was a doomed cause at that point. Because the culture had changed so much from what it was in the 90s at that point. We had gone from Marilyn Manson to Nickelback. And my timing might be a bit off there by a couple years for Nickelback. Yeah, the culture had changed by 2001, and it was a doomed cause. If it hadn't died then, it would have died within the next couple of years.
Well, possible that ECW could still be alive by now, but a big network does not really constitute to bigger viewership or lifespan for a promotion. You see, Wrestling Society X showed a lot of promise when it was on NTV, but what happened? They only lasted one season.
I think a large part of ECW going to the USA Network, they may not have survived on USA for more than about a year or two, but you think about it, they died in April of 2001. You go 2 years after that, you're in the middle of 2003. YouTube is catching its legs. Now ECW is on YouTube. ECW can run their live shows via YouTube, can gain them followers via YouTube. Much the same way how Ring of Honor almost died and stayed around and is now arguably the third largest company, you give and take with Lucha Underground, in wrestling. ECW could have followed that same plan. If they'd have survived just 1 or 2 more years, they could have been an internet-based company, still done their shows, still done their merchandise, and been the largest, I guess you could even call them, indie promotion in wrestling, and would still be around today. Now, my bonus one, and like I said, the reason I didn't make this my main one was because I wasn't sure how much you knew about him. Back in the early to mid-70s, there was a wrestler called Magnum TA. He's worth a Google. You should look him up. Had some of the greatest matches in the NWA at the time. He was the NWA United States champion, and he had glowing references from the likes of Harley Race, from Ric Flair, from the American Dream Dusty Rhodes. He got in a motorcycle accident, wound up not being able to wrestle again. He was on pace to be a world champion. Now, Flair was a 16-time champion, and the American Dream had his fair share of title runs as well. If Magnum TA doesn't get hurt, is Flair a 16-time champion? He would have had a long-time person to feud with that wasn't Ricky Steamboat or wasn't Dusty Rhodes. He would have had another good guy to go at. He would have had another main event caliber performer that he could have traveled the world with and been a superstar. Magnum TA should be in the WWE Hall of Fame. And let's call that for what it is. That's the Wrestling Hall of Fame now. But he should be that. He should be there. And he should have been there had he not gotten into a motorcycle accident. And honestly, if he'd had the same luck that Flair did when Flair got into his airplane crash and was able to come back, I think we'd be talking about Magnum TA as one of the best ever. Any of you guys ever even heard of Magnum TA?
I've heard of him by name only, but I've never seen one of his matches. That was before I was even born, so...
Hey, me too, buddy. I'm just saying.
Same.
It's something you guys need to check out, because for mid-'70s to late '70s wrestling, he was a huge deal. But we're getting toward the last quarter of the show, and that means we talk about one of the hottest wrestling companies in wrestling today, and that's the Anthem-owned product that is Impact. And if you laugh at Impact one more time, you're going to join the real Danny D on suspension. Impact was, of course, last night, and I chose to write the recap using Beatles songs. The first one, we had to say goodbye to somebody, but we said hello to a number of people. I personally love the feud between Josh Matthews and Jeremy Borash. I think it's one of the greatest things in wrestling. Josh Matthews is probably the best heel in wrestling. He got Jeremy Borash, he who hasn't missed an Impact show ever, he got him suspended for at least 30 days. I see this kind of changing things, but he's gone. What are your thoughts on the whole announcer versus announcer thing being a major storyline for the wrestling product?
I think Jeremy Borash is gonna show up again next week. You see, Josh Matthews was supposed to leave for good when JB's team won, but look, just the next week he's back. So I think there will be some legality storylines where Jeremy Borash shows up again next week.
Could we be seeing the return? Chris Parks, the lawyer?
Oh my god, I hope so. Oh, I didn't even think about that. Oh, yes. Please let that happen. Abyss's brother, Joseph Parks. Because, I mean, Decay is gone. Crazy Steve.
Yeah.
Crazy Steve is done. He's with NXT now. Abyss doesn't have a tag team partner anymore. This would be huge. Oh my god, this would be so big. Alex, you may have stumbled onto something that has gotten me more excited for wrestling than I have been in months. That is fantastic. Anyway, moving on, because I gotta put my head back together. It was just blown apart. We said goodbye to Jeremy Borash. We probably saw Crazy Steve in his last match in a six-sided ring. Let's say hello to some people that are returning and some people that are debuting. Matt Sydal used to be known in a different universe as Evan Bourne, and that is a direct quote from Josh Matthews.
Josh Matthews needs to knock that off.
Yeah, because it's going to get him in a lot of trouble if he keeps mentioning a different universe. He came back last night and had a beautiful shooting star press. Took care of former X Division champion Trevor Lee. Alex, I'm going to start with you. I'm not going to ask you about the match. I'm going to ask you about Gregory Shane Helms. That lime green leather jacket. Tell me I'm not the only one that wants to slap question marks all over it and call him the Riddler.
That would be money. I would pay to see Gregory Helms take up a Riddler gimmick like Sting did with the Joker. That would be awesome.
You could have Shane Helms go insane and he could be his own villain. Bring back the Hurricane. Don't call him the Hurricane.
Oh my god, yes!
Call him like the Tornado or something. But make it the exact same gimmick, and he's going up against the Questioner or something like that, who's a ripoff of the Riddler, and have him fight him, and you could have somebody dress up as the Questioner or whatever to have a match against the Hurricane. It would be comedic on a great scale. That's just my thought.
Didn't they bring back the Hurricane back in that weird tag team title match at the Hardy compound?
I think
it was not Hurricane, because, can't say Hurricane.
Yeah, I think that name is still owned. Yeah.
It was Wind Guy.
Bring back the Wind Guy then. Whatever he was called. Bring him back, let him fight with the Questioner, and have Shane Helms just be funny again. Because that's when Shane Helms was best. Not when he was doing what he is now, where he's being a manager, and I gotta listen to that accent of his. Let him, what's up with that?
Yeah. I am shocked that Shane Helms is still with Impact, because wasn't it Matt Hardy that brought Shane Helms in as a producer originally?
Well, when it comes to stuff like that, it's a little iffy. After Bret Hart moved on, after Owen Hart died, the British Bulldog still stayed with the WWE for years. He even signed a new contract after all the stuff went down with Bret and after Owen's death. Loyalties are a strange thing to have. Maybe he looks at it like, hey, I'm getting TV time on a national promotion, and I'm a pretty big deal here, where if I was to go to the Indies, I don't know if I'd be that big of a deal. If I was going to the WWE, I would be a behind-the-scenes guy. So maybe this is just where his loyalties lie.
I don't think it's an issue with Matt anyway.
Speaking of guys that debuted, last night we saw the man formerly known as Crimson change his name to Mayweather, and a former Marine named Wilcox be the Veterans of War who took out the Monster Factory Tag Team Champions Falaba and Mario Bokara. And I said this as I was watching it last night. You know, Veterans of War, that has a chance, that's towing the line of being almost offensive. And that's coming from a veteran myself. Falaba, maybe I'm wrong here, but doesn't he look like a villain from Dragon Ball? Doesn't he look like somebody that Goku should be fighting?
Somebody, I think it was JB or Josh who mentioned Falaba was Filipino, so I tried to Google him and I couldn't find any trace as of yet. So maybe if he becomes famous, which is also a question, that's what I heard, he's Filipino too.
I thought you said, honestly, he looks like Bino, because Bino's a big guy too. Hey, Bino Machino, we're thinking about you, bud. But, yeah, I thought they said he was, he's from that area, but I want to say Taiwanese or something like that, but I could be wrong. Now, Veterans of War, is it something that you're interested in seeing? And do you want to keep seeing Falaba and Mario Bokara keep jobbing out to guys in Impact?
Well, frankly, I don't want to see Falaba or the other guy at all. Because they just don't seem like they should be on television. They don't have that star quality, you know?
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know. But Crimson is good. I just wish they hadn't changed his name, because I'm pretty sure everyone watching TNA knows that he's Crimson. And the Veterans of War gimmick is played out, I'd say, especially because they just had, Chris Melendez. They just fired him.
Let's be honest, one-legged men in ass-kicking contests don't take home the gold too often. Speaking of taking home the gold, the GFW Women's Champion, Christina Von Eerie, took on Ava Story, and Von Eerie looked impressive. She looked gorgeous. She's a Reno native. She did the oi 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 thing, so could we see her team up with Reno Scum?
I guess in the near future, but she still has the feud with Sienna. But given how KM is tagging with, what's his name? Congo Kong. Given that KM and Congo Kong are tagging, and you have either Sienna or, Laura Van Ness to be the woman in that team, maybe in the future we would see Christina Von Eerie and Reno Scum with the aforementioned Congo Kong and KM.
Sienna has a thing going with Karen Jarrett. Laurel Van Ness is associated with all of them. And as you said, KM and Congo Kong. You put Reno Scum, Christina Von Eerie, maybe you have Karen Jarrett put on some leather and have her stand in the corner in an 8-person intergender tag team match where, the whole thing, they keep building up a hot tag to Karen Jarrett, but instead somebody else tags in. They keep building her up because people want to see her get her ass kicked in the ring because of what she did in the past. And all of a sudden, bam, at the very end of the match, she gets it. She hits a slap on Laurel Van Ness, slaps her back into reality, blows off that whole thing with Laurel Van Ness. Then Sienna spears her, then, Christina Von Eerie gets involved, and then it's back and forth, finisher. Reno Scum wins, end of the match. That's something I'd tune in to see.
Well, I'm not going to tune in to see the Reno Scum ever, but I really like the Laurel Van Ness thing. I think that it's stupid and cheesy and over the top, and I hope that she keeps wearing that same wedding dress forever, honestly.
The whole her, Braxton Sutter, and Allie thing, it's just, I think...
Oh, no, they definitely need to drop the angle, but just have her keep showing up in the wedding dress, because that's stupid. And she should just be, crazy from now on.
So she's
bride.
She's a female version of Mick Foley and Runaway Bride put together.
Yeah.
I wouldn't go that way, but interesting. Now, Ethan Carter III. If I said Josh Matthews was the greatest heel in wrestling, Ethan Carter III may be the greatest heel in Impact. He went 800 days where he was undefeated in the Impact Zone. He was never pinned or never submitted. Since then, not so much. His career went into such a spiral. Bruce Pritchard had to call him out. Week after that, he cost James Storm the Impact title. Week after that, him and Storm have a very physical altercation. Now, two things came out of this. We get two contenders for lines of the night. When James Storm called, instead of calling him EC3, maybe we should call him EC bitch. And we also get that after Carter completely decimated James Storm with a 1%er. Love that finishing move, by the way. I'm sorry, Cowboy, but remember, I am a Carter, and this company needs me. Dixie has been mentioned just about every week since she's left. What does this mean? Will we see Dixie Carter back in a six-sided ring?
I don't think so. I think it's more of EC3 trying to make his own name, trying to uplift the Carter name without Dixie anywhere, in the Impact Zone. I think he's going to put on another win streak of his own, given this newfound attitude with breaking out on his own.
Alex, EC3, do you like him better as a face or a heel?
I just like EC3. He's supremely entertaining. That's me as a fan, me looking at it from what I think they should do from a booking perspective. I think that they should have kept him a face and made him the face of the company in the John Cena role.
Oh, I'm not so sure about that. You look at what TNA is trying to do. They're trying to give the wrestling fans what the WWE is lacking. That's why we see the things we do with them. More of the edgy stuff. More of the, hey, let's get the crowd to chant an obscene word.
It's all well and good to offer a different product, but if your product is a joke and no one takes it seriously, or if your product is just bad, no one's going to buy it anyway. If something works, don't try and fix it. And the John Cena formula works. It's been proven. It was proven with Hulk Hogan, it was proven with Cena, it was proven with Austin, and now it's getting proven with Roman Reigns, all who are big draws and merch sellers.
Oh, absolutely disagree with you. Hogan worked because of the time he came up. He was a champion for 4+ years because of the timing. Hogan, most of the time when you have a huge superstar name, a once-in-a-generation kind of talent, it's a combination of the talent mixing with the timing, mixing with a lack of what the fans want. Hogan came along when there was no big star. He was the first truly household name since Lou Thez. Say what you will about Ric Flair, but Hogan was the guy that you can say wrestling, everybody automatically assumed Hulk Hogan. You can't say that about Flair until later in his career. As far as John Cena, the reason John Cena is the face of the company, in large part, that's a marketing thing because of his Make-A-Wish Foundation stuff. Because every little kid looks up to John Cena as a superhero. It's not working with Reigns. Reigns is hated, and he's not supposed to be. It's not working with him.
Reigns is hated by hardcore wrestling fans, not by women and children and literally anyone who doesn't visit the R² Circle subreddit.
I completely disagree with you. I'm telling you, I think they're sticking with Reigns being his babyface to build him up somewhere around SummerSlam to turn him heel into one of the biggest angles we've seen in the last 5 years. And you brought up
no, they're never turning Roman heel. That ship is sailed.
I don't think so.
I'm telling you,
I don't think so either.
It needs to happen. It needs to happen the same way John Cena needs to turn heel, and it never will. It needs to happen. And you brought up
I agree with you. It should happen, but it's not going to.
You brought up... You know what? You say that, but they said the exact same thing about Hulk Hogan. They said the exact same thing. Hulk Hogan he's never been a heel. He's always been a good guy. He's going to stay that good guy. Even when he was getting booed, when he was hitting on Miss Elizabeth in his feud with the Macho Man Randy Savage before they made Macho Man legit what he was, and that was a crazy jealous person. Nobody was ever going to turn Hulk Hogan. And when Hulk Hogan turned, his career skyrocketed, maybe even higher than what it was when he was, telling people to eat their vitamins and say their prayers. It was unfathomable that Bash at the Beach should have ever happened. Everybody said Hulk Hogan will never be a bad guy. He will always be the guy. And when he came out, and you heard the announcers, I can't remember who it was. It was Tony Schiavone and I think it was Steve Mongo McMichael. When McMichael said he's the third guy, And Schiavone completely blew him off the same way every fan did because Hogan was coming down to save Macho Man, to save his buddies. And what happened? He joined the NWO. And he took WCW to a height that was never before and never will be again seen in wrestling. People said Hogan would never turn. And when he did, it brought them profits out there, every hole they could have ever thought. When Cena or Reigns turns heel, the WWE will explode to a like of which we haven't seen in wrestling since 1997 or 98 when wrestling was at its very peak.
But the problem is that WWE has no incentive to try anything outside of the box that they've created for themselves because the people who watch are going to continue watching regardless. WWE is the only wrestling that's available easily. Impact is on a tiny channel. Ring of Honor, I don't think, is even on cable television. And New Japan is Japanese. So, WWE is what you're going to watch if you want to watch wrestling as an American.
But this is how they do it. If they want to turn John Cena and or Roman Reigns heel, they get that crossover promotion. They get a movie star to come in, somebody sympathetic, maybe even a woman, and have Cena F5 her. Have him come out the next week, run her down. It'll get shown on, Entertainment Tonight. If they do it with, say, Ronda Rousey or somebody sympathetic, it may get shown on ESPN. And it'll get that crossover promotion that will bring people that watch wrestling in the late 90s and early 2000s during that Attitude Era golden age. It'll bring them back into wrestling and be like, wow, this is what I've missed. This is what I've been forgetting. That's what they need to do. That's how they should turn Roman Reigns and John Cena.
First of all, Ronda Rousey in 2017.
Well, yeah, good point.
No. Second of all, they have no financial incentive to try to do that. They have no financial incentive to do anything because they're going to keep making money right now regardless of what they do. But if they try anything that's even slightly a risk, they have the risk of losing money.
Right. But you look at it.
The thing about it is the WWE has already established themselves as a brand that it's either you watch us or you're sorry, regardless of what they give. That's why they're confident enough to force storylines, to force characters down the fans' throats. Because of that establishment that they have made for themselves. Like, it's either you are content or you're sorry.
Right, but the thing I'm telling you is, if you look at some of the arena shows, a lot of the upper decks may be tarped off. Maybe the scenery's a little bit bigger than what it needs to be. If they were to bring those fans back, they sell 10,000 more seats. $60 a pop, 60,000 per gate, every night, 4 nights a week. Do the math, that's several $1 million. Not to mention, I don't know about you guys, but if I were to see a Chain Gang shirt in the WWE shop with John Cena on it, probably gonna buy it. Just saying. Plus,
here's the problem with turning Cena. He is that Superman. If you turn him, kids are gonna, guess what? Hate him. They're gonna feel betrayed. And they're not gonna want to buy his merch. In fact, they're probably not gonna want to watch your show at all.
Hulk Hogan, exact same premise. The exact same thing was with Sergeant Slaughter. Sergeant Slaughter pretty much was G.I. Joe. And when he turned to be an Iraqi sympathizer, people didn't stop tuning in. People wanted to tune in more just to boo him. G.I. Joe sales went up a ridiculous amount because Sergeant Slaughter became an Iraqi sympathizer. The G.I. Joe cartoon was created because of that storyline. What's to say we won't see another boon like that with Cena? But I do agree with you on one thing. If they turn either John Cena or Roman Reigns, the other one has to stay to keep the kids around. I agree with you on that. But, folks, there was more we had to get to today, but we are well past our time limit. So we are going to say goodbye. We're going to get one last call from each of the guys. Alex, where can they hit you up?
At Official Unfunny on Twitter and The Unfunny Comedian on YouTube.
Hi, May. Give them that new Twitter handle.
Effective May 1st, it's going to be at the Jaime Luis, both at Twitter and Instagram.
All right, and as I said always, you can find me at CLANDCS on Twitter, or Caps Locks and Chair Shots is the official YouTube channel of this wrestling podcast. You can also find myself and Jaime at realsport101.com, where we are featured writers he covers 205 Live, I do all the recaps, and those little-known wrestling stories you may not have known about in the wrestling industry. But that's going to be all for the Caps Locks and Chair Shots podcast. Before I sign us off, there are a few things we must get to. The real Danny D was suspended yet again this week for failure to comply with the rules to get himself reinstated for mentioning indie wrestling too much on this podcast. However, a brokerage deal has been brought forth between the ownership of the Caps Locks and Chair Shots podcast and the representatives for the real Danny D. As such, me and him will be co-hosting a podcast together, a 1-hour special where we will argue indie wrestling. That should be up later this week or next, where me and him will go a full hour just yelling at one another about indie wrestling. We may have some featured guests. Things are still in negotiations. Also, we were teasing that we would be hearing from Bino Machino. Unfortunately, tragic events in his family have prevented that from happening. There is still a chance later on down the line that we may feature Bino in an upcoming show, but as of right now, Bino will no longer be featured in this podcast. That being said, ladies and gentlemen, this has been the Caps Locks and Chair Shots podcast. And as always, if you're not down with us, we got 2 words for ya. Keep listening.